Alright, I'm working on the hand solo in Carbonite. Now, I need access to the inside of it. There's these 6 plugs. Underneath these 6 plugs are Phillips screws. These plugs are pretty solid things. I have to drill a hole in them, put a screw in them, and pull them out. It's going to be somewhat destructive, but there's no other way to access the screws to pull this back panel off. I don't see any other way anyhow. So, I'm getting after it. I'm using a good old vice grip to pull with. I can put the plugs back in, but they're going to have holes in them. But then again, I don't really expect anyone to really see the back of this thing, so I'm not too worried about it. I'll be back and let you see the inside in a few minutes. As I suspected, there wasn't too much to the interior of the kit of the thing. It's just the battery box, a switch, and the LED lights on a light board. What does surprise me is how they did the switch. You push this thing to hit the monetary switch, on-off switch. I mean, to hit the on-off switch here. You push this thing in, which is really weird to me, but you know, it's what they did. I might do away with the switch completely because I'm going to USB power it, and LEDs, who cares? They'll be on forever as far as I'm concerned. They hot glued this power supply in down here, so I have to undo the hot glue to get it out. I mean, the light strip. I could use a wood burning tool to undo that hot glue, or my finger seems to be working. But anyhow, I'll be back. I'm going to separate the light board from this thing. I knew the light board was in there pretty loosely. I'll get a knife and cut it out. But now that I have the inside open, I have access to these side panels. I might look up and see how the side panels were actually lit and see if there's something to do with them. Okay? I might put some lights on the side panels too. I'll be back in a little while. This won't be hard to fix, fortunately. Alright, here's the back of the Han Solo thing with the light board removed. They have 1 resistor and 3 LEDs. Okay? Now, I'm going to get the power supply and measure the resistor. It looks like it's the resistor that burned up because you can see the burn spots there. Oh yeah, that resistor definitely burned up when I get a good look at it. That's probably why the whole thing quit working. I might be able to replace that resistor and the LEDs work. I can find out. I can try the LEDs pretty easily without that resistor in series. I can bypass the resistor with the power and see if it works. But anyhow, that resistor burned up, and I don't know what value it was because it burned up. If I can get the LEDs to work, that might be worth doing. Because if they're working and they're functional, then I've already got it wired. And I don't have to mess around. But since it's open, I can rewire it. I can remove this monetary switch, which I don't like anyhow, and get this thing working the way I like. So, and I can light some of the sides of it. Let me see what's going on with it, and I will get back to all of you. I need to get these 2 screws out of there before I lose them too. And Miri's in here playing with my... No, Miri, don't do that. You're going to break him. She's got a pair of vice grips, and she's trying to pick things up with it. And she's about to break one of her own toys. I'll be back in a little bit. I need to watch her a little bit closer. You know what that bear is about?
No, that's Bill Zombie Bear.
I don't like the zombie bear?
No.
Okay, let me talk to them up there. While I've got it apart, I went ahead and drilled some holes. These little side holes right here are 1.5 millimeters. Perfect for 1.5 millimeter fiber. I just drilled a hole. The fibers actually fit fairly tight. I picked a good drill bit. They fit in there fairly tight. I am going to use epoxy glue to epoxy them in. Miri, don't touch because the paint's still wet. You'll get your hands yellow. Okay? Anyhow, I'm going to use epoxy glue to glue them down in. I've also got some brass tubes, and I'm going to run the fibers into the brass tubes with the LED on the other end of the brass tube. That will light block. The other problem we're going to have to do is once I get that done, I'm going to have to, probably will individually paint the fibers. Fibers will leak light. And if I've got different colors running too close together, that'll bleed across. It's okay if everything's constantly lit, but if I have any of them blinking, huh?
I want to turn my line.
You want to paint your line?
No, I want to turn my I want to clean my line.
You want to clean your line? Okay, we'll go clean him in a minute. Okay?
He got paint on him.
Okay, he's got paint on him? Oh, the only person who would have got paint on him is you, silly baby. Alright, anyhow. Fibers will leak light if you've got blinking. If they're all solid, it won't matter, but I want to put a 4060 timer chip in here and have them blinking. A few of them blinking back and forth. The 4060 is really good about that because it flip-flops back and forth the voltage on a couple of pins. So I can just hook 2 LEDs up to that pin and have it reverse polarity and they come on and off. I'll detail that as I do it. This is getting USB power. I checked both the 4060 and the 555 will run at 5 volts, which is USB power. So I'm sounding more and more like I'm just going to flip everything to USB and run everything at 5 volts. Because it's just going to be easier because then I can plug it into a power bank and I can put 6 models together at once, plug them into a 6 USB power port, and everything's powered. It's actually, that was actually a good idea. One of my subscribers commented on that on the last Han Solo video. What I'm doing next is I have a candle burning. It's over here off site. These are big fibers, and the ends, when they're cut, are ragged. I'm going to fire polish the ends. It's just going to round them off a little bit. You can mushroom it if you're careful. You can mushroom it, and some people do that when they run fibers through their models. I don't really want to mushroom it. I just want to hit the ends of it a little bit and get them smooth so it looks like a lens on the end of this instead of a jagged cut. So that's what I'm doing now. That I'm going to get some epoxy and glue it all down in place. I'm trying to decide what's going to blink and what's not. The one thing I'm up in the air on is this panel right here. I'm off screen. Let me zoom on this one. Looking online at photos, this is glowing green and it's a solid panel. Okay? Miri, don't put that in there. Stop, please. Stop. Okay? These do not get painted. Let me have them. Thank you. I'm working with the 3-year-old. Everyone just remember that. She's usually pretty well behaved. But right there, she decided she was going to paint everything red. Anyhow, this panel right here glows green. And I'm trying to decide if I cut the panel out, put a sheet of styrene in its place, and build a light box and put a green LED behind it. If I do that, it will lose this surface detail. The other option is I can take some oil maroon and make a clear cast resin piece off this and cut that piece off completely and glue a new resin cast piece down. That won't be so easy to do. So I'm not so inclined to do that. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I'll figure it out pretty soon because I don't have a lot of time to fool with this. I do have the clear resin. I can do that. I can get some oil maroon, mold it over this, and do a clear resin cast. Wait a week for it to cure because that clear resin can take a while to cure, especially since it won't be very thick. And then once it's cured, I can paint it all black except for that spot right there, put an LED behind it, and it'll glow green. I could even embed the green LED in the resin off to the side so it lights it up indirectly. But whatever I'm going to do, I got to figure it out pretty soon. I'm going to go ahead and fire polish the fibers and then make my decision on that and be back in a minute. Alright, I got them all glued in. This glue has to cure. It's epoxy resin. It won't make the fibers brittle. The only tricky one was routing it around the switch here. And we got some up there. I did make an oil maroon casting of this. So I'm going to try to make a resin cast of it. And I might try to cut it off. But it's pretty close to this edge right there. And that worries me a little bit. I might try just to cut the upper lip off. And make a grill of that. We will see. We'll see what I do. But if the casting's no good, I'm not going for it. It took a while to get the oil maroon to cast right too, which was very irritating. It didn't want to. But here you can see the oil maroon casting. I mean, mold. Alright, I'll be back in a little while. I got some more action. Alright everyone. Here we go. The fibers are glued in, and they're glued in. You know, that epoxy does a good job gluing that in. Now, got online, did some looking. trying to find these side panels and see what I can find about them. This thing isn't even screen accurate. This part here might be screen accurate, might be a scan of the original one. The side pieces, they're not screen accurate as far as I can tell. It's hard to say because most of what I'm digging out on the internet don't look like this, and whatever screen captures I can find, this is the only thing that's lit up. Of course, in Jabba's palace, the light is shining downwards on it, and this one's lighting up from the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and leave this one lighting up from the bottom simply because of the way it's going to go in the movie room. I'm going to go ahead and leave the fibers in here. I've already put them in there. I could just not light them. I'm going to go ahead and light them. I'm still not 100% sure what I'm going to do here. I did make a mold of this. I'm going to put some resin in that mold today. But what I'm thinking of doing is really just drilling this out and putting an array of green fibers in here. If I were to drill it out with small little green fibers, it really wouldn't make that much of a difference compared to what I'm seeing, because it's not screen accurate as far as I can tell. There's little LED numbers on the side panels here. I can't do that. Well, I could if I was to really take my time with this. I'm not going to do it. I don't really care to do that, spend that much time on this. So I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing here. Now, with the fibers here, I'm going to run it through a USB, so it's going to be 5 volt. So what I did is I got on LED Wizard and put in the voltage for my LEDs. Red, orange, and yellow tend to be 1.8 volts. I've seen them as high as 2 volts. It should be 150 ohm. Even if these are 2 volts, 150 ohm is going to be fine. I'd rather underestimate this and get this too large than the other way around. That ends up with burned up LEDs. Second, this is 3.3. They usually run 3.2. Okay? Now, at 3.2 volts, it says use an 82 ohm resistor. At 3.3 volts, 68. So if it's too high a voltage here, it's running too low a resistor. So again, this one's running a higher resistor than I need. That might be too low. So I'm just going to use a 100 ohm resistor on this one and probably up that a little bit. It's just going to dim the LEDs a little bit, but not much. Okay? So take a look at the numbers. I got this out of the LED array. And I think the voltages on the LEDs are a little high. Let me look at something real quick, because I have a card here that states LED voltages as I remember it. Okay? And it says red is 1.8, and it says green, blue are 3. Orange is 2, yellow is 1.8. So running off 3 or 1.8, if I up the resistance a little bit, I'm still going to be fine. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to up the resistance a tiny bit, and we should come out okay. Now, one other thing before I get started on this. I tested the LEDs that were here. Yes, that resistor's burned out, and yes, these LEDs still light up. I'm going to replace them anyhow. They're standard 5mm orange LEDs. I'm just going to rewire it my way. I'm just going to hot glue them in or epoxy them in. Epoxy resin's non-conductive, so if I epoxy them in, there won't be any shorts or anything. Hot glue's probably the same way. It really doesn't matter which way I take it. But I'm not going to use these. So I get to cut everything off the back of this, wiring-wise. I'm not going to use the switch. I'm not going to use the battery box. If I do decide to use the battery box, I can leave it in there. It won't hurt anything to leave it. And if I leave some wires cut off of it, it won't hurt anything either. Oh boy. Big fight with the cats downstairs. It's gone quiet. Okay. Hopefully they quit. But anyhow, I think it'll be okay to just leave this. I'll just cut a little hole down here and run my USB wire through that. I've got some USB ports coming in the mail, so I can wire up to a USB port, and I could actually flush mount a USB port in the back and just plug a USB cable into it. We're going to see, those are coming from China. Ordered them about a month ago, so they should be here anytime. Most everything ordered from China has shown up, except for that. So I'm going to get going on this. I'm worried about wiring that right now, not this. So let me get my LEDs out. Let me wire up what I'm going to do. Let me pick my colors. As far as I can tell, it's mainly red lights on the side of it. So I'll probably use a lot of red, a little bit of white, and some green just to mix it up. Maybe a blue one. I set up for 4 LEDs on the back of this so I can pick the colors out. I don't think I'm going to do blinking. I could. 4060 timer chip would do good for blinking. But I never saw anything blinking on this. I don't think it would hurt if I had a couple of blinkers on it. Really don't think it would. And I might do it just for fun. Okay. Also, if I do the array here, I could do some blinking there and have them cycling a little bit, which would look pretty good. And it really wouldn't be that hard to drill this out. It's just the squares are raised and the panel lines in there are recessed. So I would have to center on the square and drill through the square and be careful how I do it. I'd also have to use a much smaller fiber than these. But that's okay. I got lots of fiber. So let me decide what I'm doing on this, get my LEDs in, and I'll come back and tell you.